no Tomahawks for now. Trump stated that he expects to end Russia's war against Ukraine in a couple of months, and it's tough for Putin. He has already lost more than 1 million soldiers. There are still no Tomahawks, but the Russians shouldn't relax. The United Kingdom has already delivered a new batch of Storm Shadow missiles to Ukraine to ensure continued strikes on military targets within Russian territory. It should be enough for the whole winter.
That's it, turn it off.
Powerful strikes against the enemy's forces. Ukrainian armed forces hit the occupiers' oil refineries and logistics facilities. Very soon we'll tell you what was burning in Russia this time. Chinese oil refineries are cutting back on imports of Russian oil due to sanctions. The Trump administration, under which Rosneft and Lukoil were targeted. Local refineries have boycotted almost half of the supplies from Russia. We'll go into detail about all this not only right now, friends, but for now, give this episode a like. We're starting. Ukrainian defenders continue the offensive operation in the Dobropilya direction. Our assault troops have managed to achieve successes. This was reported by the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, Oleksandr Syrsky. We are increasing pressure on the Dobropilya salient, continuing to liberate and clear the territory, which forces the enemy to spread out their forces and makes it impossible for them to concentrate their main efforts in the Pokrovsk area, Syrsky explained. According to him, Ukrainian assault units managed to advance in certain directions in the area of the Dobropilya salient, and the defense forces continue the operation to clear Pokrovsk of Russian troops. Ukrainian units stopped the enemy's advance in the north of the city and prevented the cutting of an important road. According to the 7th Rapid Response Corps of the Air Assault Forces of the Ukrainian Armed Forces, over the past few days, the defense forces have created opportunities to carry out the task of reinforcing the troops in our area of responsibility with additional personnel and equipment. According to the paratroopers, an active clearing operation is currently underway in the northern part of Pokrovsk. Thanks to the coordinated actions of Ukrainian units, it was possible to stop the enemy from expanding its presence in this area and to prevent the road connecting Pokrovsk and Rodinske from being cut off. We will now provide more detailed information about what is happening on the front and around it in our military overview.
The situation in the Pokrovsk direction of the Donetsk region remains tense. According to the latest data, here is where the enemy stands. They have advanced near Pokrovsk and Privolne. According to reports from the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, as of 8 a.m. on November 3rd, Ukrainian forces repelled 68 assault actions in the Pokrovsk direction of the aggressor. As stated by Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky in his evening address on November 2nd, there have been results in eliminating Russian occupiers in the Pokrovsk direction.
The front. There were reports from the military today. First and foremost, attention is on the Pokrovsk direction. There are results in eliminating the occupier. I would especially like to mention the 79th Separate Air Assault Brigade.
Zelensky also thanked the Ukrainian military for their effective and active actions both in the Pokrovsk area and in Kupiansk. Earlier Bild analyst Julian Röpke reported that Russian forces have entrenched themselves in almost all areas of Pokrovsk. According to him, more than 1,000 Ukrainian soldiers are holding the defense within the city. Enemy troops outnumber the Ukrainian forces by 10 times and possess significantly greater firepower. At the same time, as the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, Oleksandr Syrsky, stated on November 1st, there is no encirclement or blockade of the city. He reported this on his Telegram channel. In
the Pokrovsk-Myrnohrad agglomeration, our soldiers have to withstand the pressure of an enemy force numbering in the thousands, which continues its attempts to infiltrate residential areas and cut off our supply routes. However, there is no encirclement or blockade of the cities. We are doing everything possible to maintain logistics.
Syrsky noted that a comprehensive operation to destroy and drive out enemy forces from Pokrovsk is ongoing. According to him, the enemy is paying the highest price in Pokrovsk for its attempts to fulfill the Kremlin dictator's order to occupy the Ukrainian Donbass. As previously reported by Ukrainian Armed Forces officer Serhiy Tsikhotsky on Kyiv 24, the Russian occupiers who entered Pokrovsk are mostly hiding. According to him, they are waiting for reinforcements and assistance. According to the General Staff of the Ukrainian Armed Forces, as of November 3rd, Ukrainian troops repelled 12 enemy attacks in the southern Slobodansky direction. In the areas of the settlements of Vovchansk, Vovchansky Khutori, Tuke, and Otradne. In the Kupiansk direction on November 2nd, there were 13 attacks by the invaders, all of which were repelled by Ukrainian forces. In the Lyman direction, the enemy attacked 7 times, trying to break through the defense. In the areas of the settlements of Rekivka, Kolodets, Zarekhne, and towards the settlement of Korovy Yar. In the Kostiantinivka direction, the enemy carried out 18 attacks. In the Oleksandrivka direction, the enemy launched 29 attacks on November 2nd. The other directions of the front remain less tense. Since the beginning of the full-scale invasion, the occupiers' losses have amounted to more than 1,144,000 people.
Putin's soldiers are feeling the heat on the temporarily occupied territories of Ukraine, and this is happening almost every day. So fighters from the main intelligence directorate of the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine destroyed more Russian occupiers' air defense facilities in occupied Crimea. As noted, the Russian air defense system facilities were attacked by specialists from the Department of Active Operations of the main intelligence directorate. As a result of the strike on the enemy's S-400 Triumph anti-aircraft missile battalion command post, which was in a combat position, a Russian multifunctional radar and the autonomous power supply equipment of the S-400 command post were destroyed, according to intelligence reports. In addition, Ukrainian intelligence operatives struck an airfield surveillance radar. Terek of the Russian occupation army. Ukrainian defenders from the naval forces also distinguished themselves. They attacked soldiers from the Russian elite special forces who were stationed on the Sivash drilling platform. The military emphasized that, as a result of the strike, they managed to destroy the technical reconnaissance and surveillance equipment of the Russian occupiers, as well as the crew of an anti-tank missile system. The Navy noted that the occupiers are trying to pass off their defeat as a victory. They are spreading online that supposedly a Ukrainian Navy boat was destroyed by a Lancet drone. In reality, however, the video actually shows Ukrainian soldiers successfully using a kamikaze drone. Meanwhile, in the temporarily occupied Luhansk region, a number of Russian logistical facilities were hit by Ukrainian drones. Specifically, a warehouse of material and technical supplies in the village of Roskoshne and a mobile fuel and lubricants depot in the city of Dolzhansk were targeted. The defense forces are systematically implementing a set of measures to strike critical elements of the military-industrial base of the terrorist state in order to deprive it of the ability to continue its aggression, according to a statement from the central headquarters of the Armed Forces of Ukraine. In Russia, people are also losing sleep at night. There, one of the oldest oil refineries has been hit. The Saratov oil refinery supplies the needs of the armed forces of the aggressor country. The General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine has confirmed the attack on the plant during the night of November 3rd. This is at least the 6th attack on the plant since the beginning of this year. Earlier, the head of the Security Service of Ukraine, Vasyl Malyuk, reported that since the beginning of the year, Ukraine's defense forces have carried out nearly 160 successful strikes on oil extraction and refining facilities on Russian territory. This has led to a shortage of petroleum products in 57 regions of Russia and a ban on gasoline exports until the end of the year. All the details are in the report by our journalists.
On the night of November 3rd, residents of Saratov and Engels heard the sounds of sirens and explosions. In the Saratov region, the Saratov oil refinery once again came under attack. The attack was confirmed by the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine. According to the agency, on the night of November 3rd, units of Ukraine's defense forces struck the Saratov oil refinery in the Saratov region of the Russian Federation. The General Staff notes that the Saratov oil refinery is one of the oldest oil processing enterprises in Russia. It is involved in meeting the needs of the armed forces of the aggressor country. According to the Telegram channel Astra, this is at least the 6th attack on the plant since the beginning of this year. Before this, the refinery was attacked on October 16th. The day before, on the night of November 2nd, drones attacked a Russian port, Tuapse, in the Krasnodar Krai. The operational headquarters of Krasnodar Krai reported that as a result of the attack, a tanker and an oil terminal were damaged. Satellite images showing the aftermath of the recent attack have appeared online. It is reported that at least 2 hits struck the pipeline of the Transneft oil terminal. Damage to the oil tanker has also been recorded. Tuapse is one of the key hubs for the export of Russian oil and petroleum products. Recently, drones have been attacking oil refineries, energy facilities, and military enterprises in Russia, almost every day. This is increasingly depleting the economy of the aggressor country, which is already barely holding on. As noted by Ivan As, an expert from the United Ukraine Analytical Center on the Freedom Channel, fuel shortages have already hit several Russian regions. And sooner or later, it will reach its peak.
So while Moscow has not yet faced a major gasoline crisis, everything in all directions away from Moscow, to the west, east, north, and south, is already experiencing certain problems. And these problems will only continue to grow because the attacks are ongoing and relentless.
Russians may end up not only without fuel, but also without electricity. Drones are striking more and more thermal power plants in Russian regions. As journalist Michael Naki reports, residents of the aggressor country are facing the threat of a blackout. In particular, this warning was issued by the commander of the Unmanned Systems Forces, Robert Madhya Brody.
Ukraine's armed forces have launched many strikes on power stations and substations, causing periodic electricity and heating outages in cities across Russia and occupied territories.
Naki reminds us that Ukraine is attacking Russia's energy facilities in response to Russian terror against Ukrainian energy infrastructure. The journalist believes that very soon this campaign will reach a new level, with the use of slamming missiles on an almost daily basis. And then Russians will surely feel the consequences of the war they started. Meanwhile, in Russia's Belgorod, local residents have already started stealing generators that were meant to protect against blackouts. This was stated by the governor of Belgorod region, Vyacheslav Gladkov, who called the situation a catastrophically big problem.
Chinese oil refineries are cutting back on imports of Russian oil due to sanctions imposed by the Donald Trump administration, which have targeted Rosneft and Lukoil. According to Bloomberg, citing traders, state-owned Sinopec and PetroChina have already cancelled a number of purchases of crude oil from Russia, and they continue to stay on the sidelines. They have been joined by smaller private refineries which fear falling under sanctions. The buyers' strike has affected nearly 45% of Russian oil exports to China. Earlier, due to US sanctions that targeted Russia's 2 largest oil companies, a number of Indian refineries also suspended purchases of Russian oil. Next, Russian oil companies began to face problems on the Turkish market as well. The country's largest refinery, Star, which had been operating almost exclusively on Russian oil, started purchasing batches from Iraq and Kazakhstan for delivery in December. Another major Turkish refiner, Tüpraş, decided to completely abandon Russian crude in order to maintain the ability to sell fuel to the European Union. Let me just remind you that together, China, India, and Turkey purchase almost all the crude oil that Russia exports. Putin, meanwhile, continues to threaten the world with nuclear weapons. The Russian dictator Putin has already boasted about supposedly successful tests of the Poseidon underwater nuclear drone and the Burevestnik cruise missile. And now the aggressor country has unveiled a new nuclear submarine cruiser, the Khabarovsk. In this way, the Kremlin is further escalating tensions in its relations with the United States, which have the means to respond to Putin. About the standoff between the 2 nuclear powers, more on this in the following report.
Comrade Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation, the nuclear submarine cruiser Khabarovsk is ready to depart. Begin movement.
The aggressor country, Russia, has launched the heavy nuclear submarine cruiser Khabarovsk. According to media reports, this submarine is allegedly capable of carrying up to 12 nuclear torpedoes at once. Poseidon. At the ceremony, launch of Khabarovsk, Russian Defense Minister Andrei Belousov stated,
It will enable us to successfully address the challenges of ensuring the security of Russia's maritime borders and protecting its national interests in various areas of the world ocean.
Russian dictator Vladimir Putin has recently been upping the ante in the nuclear arms race. At times, he boasts about the supposedly successful tests of the Burevestnik missile, which is capable of carrying a nuclear warhead, and about the tests of the Poseidon underwater vehicle, whose power allegedly far exceeds that of the Russian Sarmat intercontinental missile.
You've probably heard about this as well. Just recently, a brand new, state-of-the-art missile featuring an unlimited operational range and a nuclear propulsion system was tested. It has undeniable advantages.
The Kremlin ruler is trying harder and harder to draw the world's attention to his nuclear weapons, and he's succeeding. However, Putin won't get away with nuclear blackmail just like that, and US President Donald Trump made this clear. We
have more nuclear weapons than anyone else. We don't conduct tests. We stopped them many years ago. But if others are conducting them, I think it's appropriate for us to start testing as well.
Trump didn't specify whom he meant, but recent events clearly point to Russia. The American leader noted that America has test sites for nuclear testing. Where and when they will be conducted will be announced soon. As Pentagon Chief Pete Hegseth stated, the resumption of testing by the United States is the right way to avoid nuclear conflict. According to him, the military will work in coordination with the Department of Energy. Trump also reminded Putin that the US has nuclear submarines stationed near Russia. And he emphasized that he is not playing games with Russia.
They know that we have a nuclear submarine, the largest in the world, right off their coast.
After Trump's statements, the Kremlin backtracked. The press secretary of the Russian dictator, Dmitry Peskov, tried to justify himself. According to him, the tests of the Burevestnik and Poseidon were not nuclear. As CNN reports, Trump is well aware that Moscow views nuclear saber-rattling not so much as a direct military threat, but rather as a diplomatic tool. In this way, Putin is trying to force the US and its allies to make concessions on the issue of Ukraine. However, he did not take into account that the US also has ways to respond. Analysts from the publication conclude that if Putin was hoping to intimidate Washington by showcasing his weaponry, he clearly miscalculated.
US President Donald Trump claims that he will be able to bring an end to Russia's war against Ukraine, since Russia would like to do business with the United States. He stated this in an interview with CBS News. When asked whether it is possible to end the war in a couple of months, Trump expressed confidence that this could happen. The US president believes that Russia's desire for economic relations with the United States could motivate Russia to seek peace. Donald Trump also stated that at the moment he does not plan to supply Ukraine with long-range Tomahawk missiles. He said this while speaking to American journalists aboard Air Force One. The US president stated that, for him, there is no final straw that would prove to him that the Russian leader Putin is not ready to end the war in Ukraine. This is a difficult war for Putin. He has lost many soldiers, maybe 1 million. That's a lot of soldiers. And it's hard for Ukraine. It's hard for both of them. Sometimes you have to let them fight, Trump said. An additional batch of Storm Shadow cruise missiles was secretly supplied to Ukraine by the UK government. For the first time, Ukrainian forces used British long-range weapons against military targets on Russian territory in November of last year. According to military analysts, with the help of Storm Shadow, the Ukrainian armed forces will be able to keep Crimea and the Kerch Bridge under full fire control. About 10 such missiles could disrupt Russian traffic across the bridge over the Kerch Strait. So what exactly is Storm Shadow? And what types of missiles does Ukraine need most today? We'll talk about this in the next segment, friends, and don't forget to like this episode.
The UK government recently secretly supplied Ukraine with an additional batch of Storm Shadow cruise missiles. Bloomberg reports this, citing its own sources. The exact number of missiles delivered has not been disclosed. The article states that the delivery of the missiles was carried out to ensure Ukraine has sufficient stockpiles ahead of the winter months, during which, according to the UK, the Kremlin may intensify attacks on Ukrainian civilians. Bloomberg emphasizes that the UK and its allies are trying to show Vladimir Putin that Western support for Ukraine will surpass the Russian economy's ability to sustain its military efforts. Storm Shadow are high-precision air-launched guided missiles with a range of over 250 kilometers. Ukrainian forces first used the British long-range weapon against military targets on Russian territory in November of last year. In October of this year, the General Staff of Ukraine announced that a target had been hit. The Bryansk chemical plant was struck using long-range Storm Shadow missiles, which managed to penetrate the Russian air defense system.
On October 21, 2025, the air forces of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, in coordination with the ground forces, navy, and other components of Ukraine's defense forces, struck the Bryansk chemical plant.
The agency also shared that the Bryansk chemical plant is an important component of the military-industrial complex of the aggressor country. A recent publication by the Wall Street Journal reported that the US administration has lifted a key restriction on Ukraine's use of certain missiles. These are long-range missiles provided by Western allies, which has allowed Kyiv to expand its attacks on targets inside Russia. They were also awaiting approval from President Donald Trump to provide Ukraine with long-range Tomahawk missiles. But he himself said that he is not considering such a possibility at this time. Political scientist and military expert in the armed forces of Ukraine, Kirilo Sazonov, gave his assessment of the Storm Shadow.
These are very impressive missiles, really excellent. And in many ways, when we talk about Tomahawks, it's nothing, guys. Believe me, the British Storm missiles are top-notch, especially now when there are no issues with the guidance system that we're receiving. Coordinates, strike points from the United States of America. And this will happen because Russia's attempt playing games with Trump ended very badly.
Earlier, Anatoly Krapchinsky, deputy general director of a company producing electronic warfare systems and an aviation expert, stated to Ukraine's defense forces that they need Attack-MS and Storm Shadow missiles more than the American Tomahawks. According to military observer Denis Popovich, with the help of Storm Shadow missiles, the Ukrainian armed forces will be able to keep Crimea and the Kerch Bridge under full fire control. Military expert from Defense Express, Valery Ryabik, reported that, according to preliminary calculations, about 10 such missiles could disrupt Russian communications across the bridge over the Kerch Strait. He noted that this is a very precise missile which uses a terrain reference navigation system for its route correction. And in the final stage, the Storm Shadow jettisons the cover from its warhead and homes in on the target using an electro-optical guidance system.